a big thing during the the election.
So, Mike, do you want to hear that?
See this Washington Journal segment online at cspan.org. The U.S. Senate is about to return from their weekly party meetings. We expect senators will continue votes on the Violence Against Women Act, reauthorizing the program for 5 years. Final passage vote likely today.
Madam President.
The senator from Oklahoma.
This is simply an amendment that says if a woman's raped and there's an article of indictment against a rapist, she ought to have the right to know the sexually transmitted diseases that that indicted rapist carries. I will reserve the balance of my time.
Who yields time?
What are we on? Madam President.
The senator from Vermont.
Madam President, the amendment offered by Senator Coburn sets up requirements that many state and local governments cannot comply with and will cause states to lose millions in grant funds to help victims of rape and domestic violence. Instead of helping victims of rape and domestic violence, it's going to leave thousands of them without help. So I would hope that we would vote against it. The Leahy-Crapo bill already has provisions for testing and treatment for sexually transmitted diseases. Now, this is why the National Task Force to End Sexual and Domestic Violence Against Women strongly opposes this amendment. In fact, everybody we've heard from oppose it, and I oppose it.
Madam President.
The senator from Oklahoma.
The people that oppose it on the grounds that they might not get as much money unless they actually keep a woman from getting raped twice. Once by the system we set up and once by their attacker. If you vote against this, what you're saying is you don't have any compassion for the women who don't know the status of the person that raped her. And so therefore they go under treatment, they go under unknown and severe psychological stress, having to be repeatedly tested. We put this in the bill last time at 5%. All we did was raise it to 20% to try to induce this behavior at the states. The chairman of the Judiciary Committee voted for this last time. So to say what we're doing is not in the best interest of women is wrong. And if you really think women ought to get raped twice, vote against this amendment.
Expired.
President, would that it were so simple. The amendment simply is going to take protection away from thousands of women, and that's why I oppose it.
The question is on the amendment. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte. Ms. Baldwin. No. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Balkus. Mr. Bekich. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Brown. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Cowan. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Cruz. Mr. Donnelly. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mrs. Fisher. Mr. Flake. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch.
How are we voting?
Say aye.
Aye. Our side. Voting aye.
Aye.
They said aye.
Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heinrich. Ms. Heitkamp. Mr. Heller. Mr. Rono. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Johann. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. I can see. Mr. Kane. Mr. King. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Manchin. Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson, okay, I got you. I'm sorry, sir. Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Ms. Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Alexander, Ayotte, Barrasso, Blunt, Bozeman, Coates, Coburn, Cochran, Corker, Cornyn, Crapo, Enzi, Fisher, Flake, Grassley, Hoban, Inhofe, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Lee, Manchin, McConnell, Moran, Portman, Risch, Roberts, Scott, Shelby, Thune, Toomey, Vitter, and Wicker. Mr. Cruz? Aye. Mr. McCain? Mr. McCain? Aye. Senators voting in the negative: Baldwin, Baucus, Bekich, Bennett, Blumenthal, Boxer, Brown, Carper, Casey, Collins, Coons, Cowan, Donnelly, Durbin, Feinstein, Franken, Harkin, Heitkamp, Hirono, Johnson of South Dakota, Kane, King, Klobuchar, Landrieu, Lautenberg, Leahy, McCaskill, Menendez, Mikulski, Murkowski, Murphy, Murray, Nelson, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Rockefeller, Schatz, Schumer, Shaheen, Stabenow, Tester, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Warner, Warren, Whitehouse, and Wyden. Mr. Heinrich, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Burr? Mr. Burr, aye. Mr. Chambliss, aye. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Levin, no. Mr. Cardin, no. Mr. Kirk, aye. Mr. Rubio, aye. Mr. Hatch, aye. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Kirk, no. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Sessions, aye. Mr. Heller, no. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Paul, aye. Mr. Merkley, no.
Any other senators wishing to vote or change their vote? If not, the ayes are 43, the nays are 57. The amendment is not agreed to. The clerk will read the bill for a third time.
Madam President.
Senate will come to order. The clerk will read the bill for a third time.
Calendar number 1, S47, a bill to reauthorize the Violence Against Women Act of 1994.
Under the previous order, there will be 2 minutes of debate equally divided prior to a vote in relation to the passage of S47 as amended. The Senate will come to order.
President, we're still not in order.
The Senate will come to order.
Thank you. Madam President,
Senator from Vermont.
as the Senate now votes on the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, I hope we'll join together in a strong bipartisan majority, as we did last year, to pass this important legislation. It will help all victims of domestic and sexual violence, and its passage is way overdue. We're working to protect victims, all victims, of domestic and sexual violence. A victim is a victim is a victim, and violence is violence is violence. So I hope senators will look past any ideological opposition, some, and join with us. I remember last year when the former senior senator from Texas, Senator Hutchinson, when her proposal failed, she joined with all of us and voted to pass this bill. I hope those who previously opposed our efforts to improve the Violence Against Women Act would vote with us and send a strong message to the other body.
Who yields time in opposition?
May I ask for the yeas and nays? I ask the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. There is. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you.
Sir. Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus.
Sorry, thank you. Did you know that? I got you. Totes. Rockefeller box. Rockefeller. I got you. Yes, sir. Parking and baggage. Your eyes. Gotcha. Your eye. Thank you, sir. Gotcha. Did you steal?
Mr. Begich. Mr. Bennett.
Yeah, not
Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Sir, go ahead. Mrs. Boxer. Sir, thank you. Sir. Mr. Brown. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Sir. Mr. Casey. Sir. Gotcha. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Sir. Ms. Collins. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker.
Okay, where are we going? Carl? We're going to our committee.
We didn't have a one-sider.
Sean.
Yeah.
I do. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Cowan, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Donnelly, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Flake. Okay.
Mr. Kirk wants to get your attention.
No, now he's talking.
No, no.
Okay, I'll watch out for him. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Franken.
He's ready now.
Okay. Kirk. Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Ms. Heinrich. Yeah.
He moved.
I know. It's like Ms. Heitkamp, Mr. Heller, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven. Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. I gotcha. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kane. Mr. King. Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Manchin. Mr. McCain. Sir. Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez. Sir. Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski. Mr. Moran. Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schumer. Mr. Scott, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Ms. Warren, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Alexander, Ayotte, Baldwin, Baucus, Begich, Bennett, Blumenthal, Boxer, Brown, Burr, Cantwell, Cardin, Casey, Chambliss, Coates, Cochran, Collins, Coons, Corker, Cowan, Crapo, Donnelly, Durbin, Feinstein, Fisher, Flake, Franken, Gillibrand, Hagan, Harkin, Heinrich, Heitkamp, Heller, Hirono, Hoeven, Isaacson, Johnson of South Dakota, Kane, King, Kirk, Klobuchar, Landrieu, Lautenberg, Leahy, Levin, Manchin, McCain, McCaskill, Merkley, Mikulski, Murkowski, Murphy, Murray, Nelson, Portman, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Rockefeller, Sanders, Schatz, Schumer, Shaheen, Shelby, Stabenow, Tester, Toomey, Udall of Colorado, Vitter, Warner, Warren, Whitehouse, Wicker, and Wyden. Mr. Moran.
Aye.
Mr. Moran. Aye. Mr. Carper.
Aye.
Mr. Carper. Aye. Mr. Udall of New Mexico. Aye. Senators voting in the negative: Barrasso, Coburn, Cornyn, Cruz, Enzi, Graham, Grassley, Hatch, Inhofe, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Lee, McConnell, Paul, Risch, Roberts, Rubio, Scott, and Sessions. Mr. Thune, no. Yes, sir. Yeah. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Pryor. Aye. Bozeman. Mr. Bozeman, no.
Okay.
Mr. Blunt votes no.
Mr. Blunt, no.
You mark them aye, you let Are there any senators in the chamber wishing to vote or wishing to change their vote? If not, the yeas are 78 and the nays are 22. S-47 as amended is passed.
President,
The senator from Vermont,
move to reconsider.
Move to lay it on the table.
without objection.
Congratulations.
Madam President, I want to thank all my
Senator from Vermont.
Madam President, I want to thank all my fellow senators in both parties who voted for this. You know, if you're somebody who has seen firsthand results against violence against women, it'd be almost impossible to vote no on this bill. Will this stop all violence? No. But will it stop a lot of it? Yes. And will it also make possible those who are caught in violence a chance for support, a chance for someplace to go, a chance to be protected from future attacks? Madam President, this is the kind of legislation that speaks to the conscience of our nation. It speaks to the conscience of the United States Senate. It tells everybody, usually the most defenseless in our society, this body stands with you. And Madam President, I would just urge our friends on the other side of the Capitol to move quickly with similar legislation. This is something that we should not be held up on. This is a way that we can say we oppose violence against women. We oppose it today. We oppose it tomorrow. We will oppose it forever. Madam President, I yield the floor, and I suggest Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Madam President, I suggest the absent quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
President.
Ohio.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the quorum call.
Without objection, so ordered.
And I ask unanimous consent to speak as if morning business for only up to 5 minutes.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm concerned when I saw a number of my colleagues are again trying to block the appointment of Ohioan Richard Cordray to the Consumer Agency. That agency has already played a significant role in saving tens of millions of dollars for consumers who have been wronged in a checking account transaction, who have been nickel and dimed and then some by bank fees. And former Ohio Attorney General Cordray has done an excellent job as the director of that Consumer Bureau. But what troubles me, Mr. President, this is only the second time in history of the Senate, at least as far as the Senate historian can figure, and only the second time in the history of the Senate, when a group of senators from one party have blocked the nomination of a presidential appointee because they don't like the agency, because they oppose the construct of the agency itself. The first time that ever happened was just a couple of years ago with Richard Cordray in this position. Now, the creation of the Consumer Bureau went through regular order. It was passed by the Senate Banking Committee, in which I sit. It was part of the Dodd-Frank reform, Wall Street reform bill. It went through the House of Representatives. It went to conference committees. All that happened was regular order to create this agency. Many people didn't like the agency. I agree with that. I understand that. I don't agree that it's not a good agency. They don't like the agency in large part because it stood up to Wall Street and it stood up to some of the bank abuses that got us in this financial situation as a country and what it did, the damage it did to our economy. But even with that, if you don't like the agency, as I said, never before in history except these two times with the same appointment process in the same appointee, the same designee, same nominee from the president, has this happened where my colleagues has said we're not going to, even though he's qualified, we're not going to nominate, we're not going to vote to confirm Richard Cordray because we don't like the agency. If you're not willing to change the agency, we're not willing to support a director. Imagine the kind of precedent that sets, Mr. President, when if you don't like an agency, you're never going to let the president confirm a leader of that agency in any agency in the federal government. You don't like food safety, then you're going to block the appointment. You don't like transportation, something in the transportation department. You don't like something else, you're going to vote against somebody taking the job to run the government. Government can't run that way. Government will be dysfunctional if this precedent is set and is ongoing. In addition to the fact that Cordray is right for the job, in addition to the fact that this agency is really, really important for the middle class and for working class people and for low-income people that need these consumer protections, it sets a very bad precedent for this body. I'm hopeful some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will think clearly about this and move ahead on this nominating process, in this confirmation process. Thank you, Mr. President. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.
The President has released a statement about the Violence Against Women Act that the Senate passed this afternoon. The President saying in part that the Senate passed a strong bipartisan bill to reauthorize and strengthen the Violence Against Women Act, saying that this is an important step that shows what we can do when we come together across party lines to take up a just cause. The statement goes on to say that the bill passed by the Senate will help reduce homicides that occur from domestic violence, improve the criminal justice response to rape and sexual assault, address the high rates of dating violence experienced by young women, and provide justice to the most vulnerable among us. The Senate passed that Violence Against Women Act, renewing that with a vote of 78 to 22. Also happening live right now on C-SPAN 3, Senate Armed Services Committee is meeting about Defense Secretary, the nominee Chuck Hagel, his nomination to that position. The committee is expected to vote on the nomination this afternoon. Again, you can see live coverage of that on C-SPAN 3. President Obama's State of the Union speech is tonight at 9 Eastern. Our live coverage will be on C-SPAN starting at 8 with your calls and comments on Facebook and Twitter. Also, here on C-SPAN, we'll carry the President's speech and get your reaction from members of Congress in Statuary Hall. That happening on the C-SPAN networks tonight. This morning on Washington Journal, we did a preview of the State of the Union.
We now turn to two reporters to give us some insight into the State of the Union speech tonight. Anita Kumar, White House correspondent for McClatchy Newspapers, welcome. We're also joined by Jonathan Strong, congressional reporter from Roll Call. Hello to you as well.
Good morning.
Anita Kumar, we'll start with you. How much do we know about what President Obama plans to say tonight? Do we have much of an indication?
We have some of an indication. I think he will return to talking about the economy. That's sort of what we're hearing from the White House. He has 4 things that he's going to focus on, but all of them will stress the economic context of it. Energy, he'll talk about infrastructure, which is new roads, new bridges, things like that, manufacturing, and then he'll also talk about education and making college more affordable. But all of that will be in the context of how can we make our economy grow stronger, how can we promote and grow the middle class.
And here's the headline in the Financial Times this morning: Obama to focus attention on the economy. Speech to be heavy on home initiatives. How much of this will echo what we heard at the inaugural address?
I think it'll be a little bit different from that. I think there were a lot of comments after the inaugural address that it was very aggressive on sort of social issues. He talked about gay rights, equal pay for women, even voting rights. And I think you'll see some of that, but my sense is that you'll see only those things that sort of can come into an economic context. So while he might talk about immigration, what we need to do as a country on that, it'll be in the vein of how does that help the economy.
And Jonathan Strong, how significant is the tone as Congress readies its reaction to what the President says?
Well, I was at a retreat the House Democrats held in Leesburg, Virginia last week, and the President gave kind of a speech to them and a preview of what he was going to say. And he took quite an aggressive tone in terms of the coming standoff with the Republicans over the sequestration cuts. I was surprised at how feisty he was. He said he's more than ready to engage in a standoff with them over those cuts. Now, if you remember, he wants tax increases and a combination of tax increases and spending cuts, and the Republicans just want to keep it as all spending cuts.
If you'd like to join the conversation with Anita Kumar and Jonathan Strong, Republicans can call 202-585-3881, Democrats 202-585-3880, and independent callers 202-585-3882. So do we have a sense yet of how members of Congress will have responses to what the President says? How much preparation can they do ahead of time to talk to cameras tonight, to respond tomorrow?
I mean, they're reading all the stories that we're writing about what's going to be in it, and they're preparing. But, I mean, you do have to make an audible at the last minute given what exactly happens in the speech. And nobody usually knows, although it has leaked in the past now. There's a precedent for it leaking in full before the speech is actually delivered. But most of the time, you're going to have to react as it happens.
We have a poll on our Facebook page asking viewers whether or not they think State of the Union addresses matter. 57 have said no, 47 have said yes. Anita Kumar, how much do they matter here in Washington?
Well, I think they matter here in Washington quite a lot, but I think we were just talking beforehand that people don't really seem to remember what the President says the next day. But I think they matter, and they set the tone for what's going to come again, come up in the next few months. It's funny, I was talking to some speech writers for past presidents who talked a lot about how people beg to get just a sentence or a phrase in the State of the Union address because they feel like that's going to become an issue later on down the line if it's just mentioned by the president.
We're seeing some stories about who might be attending this speech. What do we know about guests tonight, Jonathan Strong?
Nancy Pelosi is bringing a fourth grader who was at the Newtown Elementary School when the shooting occurred. And a number of lawmakers are bringing people from Newtown. So there is a definite focus from the congressional Democrats, at least, on the gun control proposals that the president and the Democrats are putting forward.
And Anita Kumar.
Yeah, they haven't announced, obviously people always sit with the First Lady. They haven't announced the full list, but we've started to hear some of the names. And again, there will be some emphasis on gun victims. The parents of the 15-year-old teenage girl that was killed in Chicago, I think that was about a week ago, they will be joining the First Lady. And just to refresh people's memory, she was killed, she lived about a mile from the Obama's house there, and she was killed in just random gunfire.
How much do the cameras show us who the guests are? Why is this significant, Anita?
Well, I think there's been several stories in the last few days of just that show sort of the spotlight's really on these people. The president often mentions them in his speech, and so I think the spotlight's really on them for about a day, and then they kind of have to go back to their regular life after that.
All right, let's go to our first caller, George, joining us from Florida on our Republicans line. Good morning, George.
Yeah, I own a small sub-operation. And now the tax is going to go up, and you said he was going to, the President Obama was going to speak to taxes raising during the State of the Union. I just wonder, I mean, in such an economy, to raise taxes on me is going to really hurt, and I think I'm going to probably help more people. But I have to ask one thing. When do we know that we're taxed enough? How high can taxes go? I don't think anybody has addressed that yet. People call in and use the term we. It's not we anymore. It's some of us paying taxes.
Okay, so George was breaking up a little bit on the phone, but he's talking about the issue of taxes and how much is too much to be taxed. Jonathan Strong, do you think we'll actually hear the word taxes tonight from President Obama?
Well, no. And for some time now, Democrats in general have been using a new term for tax increases, which is revenues. It sounds much nicer. It's like sugar, you know, to help the medicine go down, I guess. And so that is what he'll refer to. And quote unquote, a balanced approach is the preferred nomenclature for the president.
Here's some stories about guests. As Anita Kumar mentioned, the mother of a shooting victim in Chicago will be a guest of the First Lady during the State of the Union tonight. You can see there an image of her. The announcement comes just a few days after the First Lady attended the teenager's funeral. And also looking at guests tonight, we see this. Ted Nugent plans to be there. This is a story coming to us from the Washington Times. It says, the cameras could linger on rock icon, carnivore, and gun rights advocate Ted Nugent when he takes his seat in the House gallery for tonight's address. He's a guest of Representative Steve Stockman. And the Texas Republicans' intent, his communications advisor, Danny Ferguson, says, we hope President Obama will consider the millions of Americans who privately own firearms and would have their Second Amendment rights stomped out by a universal background check. Anita Kumar, are we seeing a representation of a battle being waged in the United States here in the House chambers tonight?
I think we are. I think the people will reflect, guests will reflect other issues as well, immigration included. And also, I have heard about some people that had trouble voting on Election Day, particularly one woman in Florida who had, I think she's 102, and she had to stand in line for 6 hours, is coming from the Miami area. But yes, it sounds like most of the guests that we've heard about so far are relating to the gun issue. And the president will talk about that, although I don't think that's going to be the focus of his speech.
What about social issues? What else might we hear him talk about tonight?
He actually talked in the inaugural address, if you'll remember, really pretty strongly about gay rights, gay marriage, and that's something that advocates are really looking for him to mention tonight. He has talked about a few other things, but primarily he's mentioned sort of equality for women, equal pay for women, social issues in that regard. But definitely the focus tonight is going to be the economy.
All right, let's go to Betty in Pittsburgh, Kansas, on our Republicans line. Hi, Betty.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to say before an address such as the State of the Union, we always have war and more war and threats of war and threats of bombs and threats of killings and all of these things focused on and happening, and it's almost like we stir it up before a State of the Union address, or it's like when you have a holiday, the gasoline, you know for sure, is going to go up. What is the point? We need to get out of a privatized war where we cannot control generals or companies, corporate companies, taking more money, putting more money into the Cayman Islands for private use, and our soldiers are made up of the poor. They are not made up of Congress's sons as they were in World War II.
Betty, do you plan to watch tonight? Do you plan to watch or listen to the speech this evening?
Absolutely, yes. But you need to listen to what isn't said as well as what is said.
Okay, how is what isn't said significant, Anita Kumar?
Well, I think it is going to be interesting. She was talking about war. I think it'll be interesting that I don't think we're going to hear a lot about foreign policy tonight. You will hear about the president trying to pull troops out of Afghanistan. You can bet we'll hear that. And, of course, we'll probably hear about North Korea since that happened today. I heard you mention that earlier. So that might change things a little bit. But I think there will be a good number of things that he will not mention, which is interesting.
For the record, I've never observed a pattern of wars beginning in conjunction with State of the Union addresses. But one thing I'm going to be watching for this evening is the Congressional Black Caucus, which is a collection of black members of Congress, met recently with Valerie Jarrett on the Hill, and she's one of the president's top advisors. They discussed the State of the Union to some extent, and the question I have is whether he's going to address black unemployment specifically and things that will help bring that number down. I think that that's what the Congressional Black Caucus wants, but I don't know if that's what he's going to do.
We're talking with Anita Kumar and Jonathan Strong. Anita Kumar is a White House correspondent for McClatchy Newspapers. Her background includes time at the Washington Post from 2007 to 2012 and the St. Petersburg Times for a decade prior to that, where she worked in both Florida and Washington. And Jonathan Strong, congressional reporter for Roll Call. Right now he covers House leadership, but he's had some other experience there at Roll Call as well. He also was an investigative reporter at the Daily Caller and reported on environmental regulations for inside the EPA. Our next caller is Jim in Marietta, Georgia, Republican. Hi, Jim.
Hi. Yeah, I'm not going to watch tonight because I'm sure it'll just be the same as usual.
And what does that mean to you? What's the same as usual?
Well, the same stuff. He always talks about how he's going to lower taxes and how he's going to get jobs going, but it's the same stuff. But, no, he's got those kids up there for pawns to show them, trying to pass his gun right bill, which you should leave that alone. I mean, guns don't kill people, people kill. So, I mean, he's just screwing everything up the way I look at it.
Jim, are you going to watch Senator Rubio's GOP response tonight?
Yeah, I'll watch that. But I won't watch Obama, though.
And what about Rand Paul? We're seeing Senator Paul of Kentucky give a Tea Party rebuttal. What about him?
Yeah, I'll watch him. I don't care about watching Obama because you watch him one time, you know everything he's going to say.
Okay. Anita Kumar, you spent some time in Florida, a significant amount of time. What do we know about what Senator Rubio plans to say tonight, and how does that matter?
I think a lot of people are going to be watching him. They're calling him the new face of the Republican Party. He's a young, very charismatic speaker, and he's been very involved in the immigration issue. And so I think people are going to be looking to see sort of how much he'll embrace what President Obama says, and if he'll be willing to go along. I mean, the president's going to talk today, his advisors say, about sort of there are places we can find a common ground. And so the question will be, will Senator Rubio be talking in that vein that they can find common ground, or will he be taking sort of a step back?
And Jonathan Strong, he comes from the ranks of the Capitol from behind us. How much is Republican leadership influencing what Senator Rubio has to say tonight?
Well, I mean, they obviously huddle and, you know, work things out. On this, at the same time, Senator Rubio has his own political interests at stake as well, and he's in all likelihood going to be running for president in 2016. So I'm sure he's you know, laying down his marker in those discussions.
And what is the difference between what he'll be delivering and what Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky will be talking about tonight?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about this because, you know, is this an alternative? Is this a rival address? And Rand Paul has said, no, we're in conjunction, we're on the same team, so to speak. So I think the thing to watch out for is places where the two speeches don't agree with one another. That kind of highlights that the Republican Party is not united on some issues.
David's up in Ohio, independent caller. Where are you from in Ohio, David?
Chillicothe.
Okay, go right ahead.
Well, I think our union address is basically a waste of time because really what it does, it builds the morale of each individual, and once it doesn't be followed through, it kind of drops us all out, and then that's where our unemployment rate comes up because we just kind of give up because our taxes are being raised. And as well as our immigration, they should put a cinch on that because there again it has fallen back to the September 11th. We was more open to who we let come in, but there again, the more we let come in, the more our taxes are going to go up in support of each individual that comes into the country. So I think there's a few issues they have to address with immigration. Plus, there again, as getting our troops out of Afghanistan, but yet we're going to stay and rebuild. So I don't see any sense in keeping our troops around if we're going to rebuild a country or a nation that has come at war with us.
Okay, thanks, David. Response, Anita Kumar.
I didn't quite follow what he was saying in the beginning. About immigration, though, I think we'll see a strong emphasis on that. And he talked about his taxes going up, I think. It's interesting that a couple callers now have talked about how President Obama sort of said the same things about taxes going up. And actually yesterday, Republicans had started to hear about some of the things that the president was going to talk about, the economy, and they already started to say, oh, it's the same thing. It's the same thing we've been hearing for 4 years. So I think it'll be really important for the president to talk about not just some old proposals, which he will talk about things that Congress has rejected, but also new proposals. How is he going to get more jobs created?
Ruben is our next caller in Jacksonville, Florida, on our Democrats line. Hi, Ruben.
How you doing today?
Good.
All right, I'm calling because I feel like the Republicans are not telling you everything that they're doing. They want to cut Social Security and they want to cut Medicare, but they're not telling you how they're lobbying you, the oil company across the foreign sea. They sending money over across the foreign sea also. I don't think that Republicans have learned that the Republicans did not win the election. Obama won the election. And they want to lobby all this money across the sea, but they want to cut Medicare and Social Security and tell people that Obama haven't put nothing on the table yet. And I feel like that's unfair to the people that need help in this country.
Ruben, what do you want to hear from the president tonight?
Well, I want to hear that he tell the Republicans that what they're trying to do is not going to work because, first of all, the Republican is not telling you about everything. They're still trying to get rich off their scheme that they're planning. And I want Obama to talk about these things, bring them to the light so they can see it and get on his style and get on the case and start letting the people vote. Let them know that Republicans, you did not win the election.
Okay, so our caller from Florida, a Democrat, Jonathan Strong, says he wants the president to go out on the offensive because he has a mandate. Will we hear that kind of a tone?
I believe so. I think reading the tea leaves here, reading all the stories about what's coming out, one of the interesting things is you saw a round of stories in the press that said Obama is going to pivot back to the economy in this speech. Then the White House came out and said, we're not pivoting to the economy. One of the things that the Republicans harped on is that you know, Obama has pivoted to the economy over and over and over and over again throughout his presidency. It's almost an embarrassment at this point when he says he's going to pivot back to the economy because the recovery is still tepid.
Anita Kumar.
It was interesting that what the caller just said, because the president, since Election Day, has repeatedly said, well, the American people agree with me. I won. I mean, that's basically what he's been saying. So every time he introduces a new proposal on gun control, on immigration, on a balanced approach to the economy, he says, well, I won the election. The people agree with me. And so, I mean, I think we will see that message tonight. Definitely. He has been talking about that for 2 months now.
And here's the headline of the Washington Times, the State of the Union to fulfill the wish list for liberals, the momentum to push agenda. Craig, Marysville, Ohio, Republican, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
The one question I got is he talks about rebuilding infrastructure, and at the end of this month, we're going to raise the debt ceiling once again. But why is it that we send $700 million to Cairo to rebuild their sewer systems?
So, Craig, what else do you think about foreign policy? Is that something you want to hear the president talk about? And what's your opinion about other international news?
Well, I'm more care about the infrastructure of this country and how our jobs are being shipped overseas. So I want to know what he's going to do to bring the jobs back.
Okay. So, Anita Kumar, do you think we'll hear concrete ideas in terms of jobs? There's the economy on one hand, but then there's jobs on the other, and our caller wants to hear about infrastructure in particular.
Well, the White House says that there are 4 areas of interest, and manufacturing is one, but infrastructure is another. So those jobs and how to grow the economy are supposed to be there. So we'll see. They also say that it's a combination of old proposals that he has tried to get passed in the last 4 years and has been unable, and also new proposals.
On the question of the infrastructure, I think the caller has the idea that a lot of our federal spending is being diverted to foreign aid. And most people are surprised to learn that it's less than 1% of the budget. If you look at federal spending, the entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, are actually putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the rest of government's responsibilities because it continues to take a greater and greater share of spending. And if you look at the spending battles over the last 2 years in Congress, all of the cuts have come out of those other things, not Social Security and Medicare. And if we keep seeing that, you're going to see less and less infrastructure, defense, all those typical things of what you think government does, and more money coming in and going out back to people in the United States.
Are there members of Congress that we're not hearing from tonight on the official agenda who are significant? Congressman Paul Ryan, the VP nominee on the Republican side, other members of Congress who hope to be leaders of the Republican or Democratic Party in the future. What are they doing tonight?
You know, they're going to be there in the chamber. I think that Republicans are probably going to be on their best behavior. If you remember the Joe Wilson, you lie moment, I imagine that we're not going to see a repeat of fireworks. I don't think that worked out to their political benefit. But, you know, they're going to be in there. They're going to be watching it. They're going to be preparing their response. Speaker Boehner will be evaluating his next move in the spending battles that are looming over the Capitol, and they'll have to figure it out.
One of our followers on Twitter, Jody, writes in and says, whatever is said tonight, I hope that no one will interrupt the president with a childish "you lie."
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I'll be surprised if it does.
There's an image in the Washington Post. Plenty of time to think of a line when the president walks by. It talks about the competition to get a seat on the aisle so members can shake the president's hand as he enters the chamber. Anita Kumar, why are the visuals of this important for members?
Well, they just want that. There are stories every year about how members just have waited 6, 7 hours. Some of those people just want a chance to say something, shake his hand. Others want to be on television. They want that moment for themselves. So it's kind of interesting. It's sort of the same group every year, too, that waits around.
The whole thing is a stage, and you know, it's political theater. It's all symbolic. The guests are symbolic. The aisle seats are symbolic, and you know, they want that photo of them shaking the hand of the president in their newspaper back home to show that there's somebody here in Washington.
Jonathan Strong, congressional reporter for Roll Call, and Anita Kumar is our other guest, White House correspondent for McClatchy Newspapers. Mike's our next caller, North Bergen, New Jersey, Democrats line. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Go right ahead.
I'm calling about the entitlements.
Okay.
I mean, Romney ran, he says he's going to check all the loopholes and everything else, and then all the Republicans are changing their mind. How come? I mean, what's the reason for that? That was one of the big things during the election.
So, Mike, do you want to hear that talked about tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, Anita Kumar.
I'm not sure.
Do you want to hear more from Mike?
Sure. You were saying that they changed their mind, the Republicans. Is that what was happening?
Yes, they changed their mind on everything. Everything I see that they don't want to take. Cantor and all them guys.
Uh-huh. Well, some of the Republicans argue that the president also has changed his mind, that he's proposed things about changing Social Security also, and has sort of taken that back. But, I mean, I think that all of those things are somewhat on the table. They've talked about entitlement reforms. They have different ideas for that. I think you will hear some of that. I mean, the president was very, you know, clear in December when he was working out a deal that didn't happen with the Speaker, John Boehner, that he would be open to some changes for the entitlement. And I think you'll hear about that. I mean, that's part of the balanced approach that he says he wants to have, that includes both spending cuts and also changes to entitlements, but also new tax revenue.
In Mike's defense, though, Majority Leader Eric Cantor did just deliver a speech that was billed as a rebranding and was at least the 4th time that he's rebranded himself.
How does sequester affect what's happening tonight? And Anita Kumar, remind us what sequester is and why we're talking about it right now.
I hate that word. See, in Washington, everybody knows that word, but I try never to use that word in stories. Basically, Congress and the White House made a deal, when was that, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, that was never supposed to happen. But basically, there's a whole automatic spending cuts across the board, defense and domestic cuts that are going to go into effect. They were supposed to start in January, and they've been postponed for 2 months, so now they'll start in March unless a deal is made. Basically, this is what we're talking about with this balanced approach. The president's arguing we should postpone those spending cuts for a few more months while we try to work out a deal. This is both to this is basically for deficit reduction. So I think the first set is $85 billion that are going to go into effect March 1st. And everybody, Republican, Democrat, White House, Congress, had said the cuts will not be good for the economy. And so everybody's trying to figure out a way around them, but they disagree on how to do that.
Politico says the backdrop is sequestration on their front page. New term, old problems, looking at the president's speech. And here he is giving addresses throughout the years. But David Rogers reports for Politico that sequestration is what's happening behind the scenes. And following the jump, the story says that the leader of the Senate, Senator Harry Reid's strategy is herd the GOP into the corral before the sequester. Jonathan Strong, will the president use the word sequester tonight? Are we going to be hearing him talk around this issue a little bit, and how will Congress react?
Well, given, you know, according to his preview that I saw last week, he definitely will be taking this head on. I don't know if he'll use the word sequestration. It's kind of a Washington word. One of the interesting things is that many of the House Republicans who are really anxious to cut federal spending are surprisingly willing to let these cuts happen. One of the reasons is the very first spending battle after Republicans took control in April 2010, they secured about $30 billion in cuts. The Washington Post just went back and looked at those cuts, and most of them were fake. An example is that the census happens every 10 years, and they spent $6 billion in 2010. They're not going to spend money until 2020, but they counted the $6 billion in 2011 as a spending cut, money that was never going to be spent. Now, you add up the totals of those fake cuts, and this is why these Republicans want these draconian cuts, because they're real. And they've lost faith that the deals negotiated by their leadership are going to be real cuts.
Anita Kumar, why is this a significant backdrop for the speech?
Well, because the cuts are coming in about 3 weeks. I mean, it's the most serious issue that they've got to deal with. I mean, there's a lot of other things on the table, but that's coming, what, March 1st, which is just in a couple weeks from now. I don't think the president's going to shy away from it. It was just, what, 2 weeks ago that he did a sort of an address to the nation. Not really. It was in the daytime, but he had a little statement, 7 minutes. But basically, he had heard what Jonathan said, which is Republicans are considering allowing these spending cuts to go through. And so he was very clear that they should not do that, that they should postpone them. But he says that he's not sure that they can have a big deal right now, so that he just says we should have a small deal and postpone them for a couple more months. But I mean, it's interesting because both Republicans and Democrats say they're sick of, you know, we'll just postpone things for 2 more months, but they keep doing it anyway.
Let's go to Springfield, Oregon, where a Republican caller is up next. Dalton, hi.
Hi. I'm hoping tonight that Obama will talk about finally doing some military cuts in places that haven't been hostile for over 50 years, namely Germany, Japan, and Italy, and hopefully finally actually making serious cuts to the war in Afghanistan, and the fact that we spend $80 billion a year on the Strait of Hormuz, and that's more than the entire world combined spending on green energy. I also hope that we can put some of the money we save on the military towards education here and jobs.
Okay. All right, thanks for your input, Dalton. We have someone on Twitter who says, I would like to hear a JFK to the moon speech, but towards a new power grid for America. We could get to work and get jobs.